What if I told you that one of the greatest anime to ever come out is more controversial than Kanye West will ever be? An anime with a start so strong, it tricked countless viewers with its mystical world, only to later reveal traces of the author's twisted nature woven into the story itself. And to top it all off, it's authored by the infamous P. Diddy. Okay, I lied. This anime wasn't made by P. Diddy, although that might have been less shocking than reality. Made in Abyss is one of the most immersive, most captivating adventure stories the medium of anime has ever seen. Yet somehow it simultaneously achieves this level of fascination while also being one of the most deceptive pieces of television I've ever engaged in. Like, I want you to look at this thing. This looks like the image Brody Fox would put on screen after a Yo Mama joke in 2013. It looks like a blobfish with fur. It looks like Rare'mon from Digimon. Although in truth, this creature is a soul forever in torment. She was once a little girl, Mitty, born into a world so indifferent that her absence would have barely stirred the wind. And as it happens, one day she vanished. A man took her, and though she could have screamed, begged, fought, she didn't. Because the idea that anyone would come searching felt as though it lived in the world of delusion. But what gave her strength, what gave her reason, was a friend. The kind of friend who made the world seem less hollow. They spent every moment together, two children clinging to each other in a place that devours innocence. But then he called for them, that man, the one who took her. He beckoned them, and like lambs unsure of the slaughter, they followed. He led them to two adjacent glass chambers, locked them in, and only then, with eyes cold and voice clinical, he revealed the truth. The abyss, the chasm that they all lived beneath, was not just deep, it was cursed. Each layer punished those who tried to climb back up, and he, in his obsession, wanted to understand that curse. So he chose them. He made Mitty the subject of his twisted experiment. The mechanism was cruelly simple. The tubes would share the burden of the curse, but as they ascended, the curse would concentrate deliberately on Mitty's side. The floor dropped, and between sobs and fading light, the two girls whispered their final goodbyes. By the time they reached the surface, Mitty was gone. Her body a grotesque, misshapen mass of flesh and suffering. Unable to speak, unable to move, unable to die, trapped in a shell that shouldn't be alive, Mitty became the embodiment of agony itself, and yet she endures, because somewhere buried in what remains of her soul is a promise, a single flickering hope that one day she'll finally be allowed to rest. And the one thing that shocks me the most about all of this is that this is the least depressing arc in Made in Abyss. This is exactly the cycle that Made in Abyss traps you in. Throughout the story, it lulls you into this false sense of comfort. At first, it feels like a cozy adventure filled with beautiful landscapes, a magical soundtrack, and a cast of whimsical, childlike characters. It all seems so approachable. So then you let your guard down and allow yourself to get immersed. But then, without warning, everything changes. The tone shifts, and the story turns unapologetically dark, and it feels like the show has betrayed you. This might sound stupid saying this out loud, but I think most people who have watched the show will understand when I say that halfway through season 1, you will start developing a toxic relationship with the show itself. It pulls you in so deeply, makes you feel safe, and then devastates you. That emotional whiplash creates a conflict inside you because you want to trust the story, to believe in the comfort it offered at first, but Made in Abyss breaks that trust, and in doing so, it forces you to question your expectations and how easily beauty can hide horror beneath the surface. And as you continue on with the show, you realize that it doesn't get any better. If season 1 is like a 6 on the trauma meter, the movie is like a 9 and season 2 is like an 8. So ultimately what we end with are two separate but equal feedback loops. One that the show narratively goes through and another that the viewer experiences. And while I was going through my own personal main abyss depression cycle, I just had one burning question. Why? Why as an author would you do this? Is there really a greater purpose to this besides just shock value? And most importantly, where the hell is this show going and what exactly is it trying to convey? And after mulling it over, it became clear that the answer to all of my questions can be explained with Santa Claus. Trust me, this is going somewhere. Santa Claus is not real. The first time you heard someone say this to your face, you were probably in shock, maybe a little bit in denial too. But more importantly, it felt like your whole understanding of the world just started crumbling. And what's left is this less magical, less perfect, less ideal image of the world that you're living in. This is probably the most common example of a loss of innocence. There's no going back, and each layer gets more and more real. This analogy, I think, can explain most of the events in Made in Abyss. Why is every layer of the abyss more and more terrifying, yet they're forced to keep descending anyways since they can't climb back up? A loss of innocence. Why are all the monsters in reality 20 times more horrifying than any book could have ever described? A loss of innocence. Why does almost every hotel come pre-installed with a cuck chair facing the bed? Loss of innocence. Ultimately, Made in Abyss is the most real coming of age story. Constantly, the characters are beat down and forced to accept the grim reality they're living in. Although personally, I see much more than doom and gloom in this show. To me, Made in Abyss is about recognizing the ugly truth of life that is full of suffering that not even the most innocent among us are safe from, but regardless, being able to find beauty within all of it. If you were to ask me personally to name an example of a piece of media that I thought was created by P. Diddy, I'd probably name that one, slightly controversial game on Steam that got removed because it centered its entire gameplay and leveling system off of one word that rhymes with grape and crepe. But I think the term Diddy Media nowadays is pretty much just used to describe any weirdly sexual thing, especially with pedophilic undertones. And I think the absolute worst part of being in the anime community is that this description just described like 40% of all anime. At least from the perspective of a non-anime fan. And that still sounds seriously exaggerated saying that out loud. But I want you to just imagine a normal ass person with zero anime under their belt sitting down to watch Monogatari. A lot of anime fans have been in this community so long that they seriously just get desensitized to how weird it could get sometimes. I remember I was trying to get my Haitian mother into anime at some point, and seeing how she used to watch a lot of cooking shows at the time, my 20 IQ troglodyte ass thought it'd be a good idea to show her Food Wars. Yes, that Food Wars. At that point in time, it's been so long since I've seen the show that I frankly forgot how absolutely psychotic the fan service was. And the fact that so many anime out there are fixated with the high school setting makes this issue about 2 trillion times worse. And I genuinely do think that if you ask a complete anime virgin with no experience in the medium, they probably consider almost half of these shows as Diddy Media. Although personally, I wouldn't call 40% of anime Diddy Media. That's way too much of a sweeping generalization, and I don't think it's really fair to say that about an entire medium of entertainment. Maybe like 35%. This is one of the biggest issues with anime as a medium. If I were to go onto r/Mushoku Tensei and voice my opinion that the series is great, but it's plagued with a lot of indefensible pedo shit, I would be hit with nukes. walls of text. Niggas who only graduated high school because of ChatGPT would suddenly mutate into anime philosophers for the sole purpose of constructing the single most dog shit argument I've ever heard in my life. Read the text on screen if you care about my opinion on this show's controversy. But then you could go into r/Made in Abyss, say the exact same thing word for word, and you'll arguably be met with an even more insane response. You're not hit with a wall of text defending the worst parts of the show. You are hit with a community that has come to terms with the disgusting nature of their show. And obviously, this is just my own personal experience with both communities. But I think this does represent a general trend for both sides, since they know it's indefensible. They just don't care. Kanye West made graduation. This is more than just a simple sentence. It's a weapon of mass destruction to completely and utterly decimate any single person's argument against this. You see, the skill it takes to separate art from an artist, especially recently, is the most absurd level of Simone Biles routines of mental gymnastics you could possibly imagine. But in Japan, whew, this shit's a different beast. Like what are you gonna do? Separate Rurouni Kenshin from 2 terabytes of child porn? That's a little bit harder to do, at least for me. And in Made in Abyss's case, you're not only separating the show from, well, tweets like this, but also from weird shit that actually happens within the show itself. So is Made in Abyss Diddy Media? Well, I think this question is so much more complicated than people think. You might have noticed that throughout the entire section where I was going over why I think the show is so incredible, I never once genuinely recommended it. And that's for one very specific reason. There is a not 0% chance that this author has wet dreams about little kids, and that fucking scares me a lot. Riko hasn't even lost all her baby teeth yet, and she's drawn naked, pissing, tied up in bondage positions, and not to mention the weird emphasis on Reg's third leg. There is an argument that I've heard a lot of people use, that the uncensored and morally offensive nature of Made in Abyss plays heavily into its themes, where showing us these unfiltered, politically incorrect depictions parallels with the characters having to face the raw and unfiltered reality of their own situation. And I like half agree with this line of thinking. It honestly is very logical, just thinking about it with cold reasoning. It could and does play into the themes of the show, but at the same time, it doesn't really need to be shown at all. This is one of the rare situations where I think tell don't show is actually good advice. An implication of these things happening would have had the same effect in my opinion. But at the end of the day, who the hell cares what I think? What does the author himself have to say about all of this? In a 2019 interview with Sakushi at a Comic-Con in Naples, Italy, he was asked the question, Made in Abyss has a tendency to show peculiar situations not usually found in mangas, such as erections, kids peeing and all. Are they put there to make the story raw and authentic? And this is what he responded with. There's not a real reason for it. It's just that they're a normal part of everyone's lives. So I didn't think there was any issue showing such a normal behavior of humans in the story. And to be honest, I do enjoy drawing them. Throughout this interview and also similar ones, he consistently has this sort of response when asked about the many controversies of the series. And although I do find it personally weird, especially the part where he says he enjoys drawing kids peeing, in the same interview, he also admitted that the biggest inspiration of Made in Abyss is Dark Souls and Bloodborne. So, you know what guys? Maybe I should let this author off the hook. But then, just as I was about to do that, I read some of the manga. You see, talking about the anime as opposed to the manga is like talking about a fart as opposed to Hiroshima. You can watch the anime and think that some scenes are a little weird, but ultimately come out of it with a good impression. The first time I watched the anime, I thought some scenes kind of just didn't need to happen, but I didn't get the impression that it was some Gunnar lollybait show, since most of the weird scenes I mentioned before were either heavily censored or lasted less than a second. Although reading some of the manga for this video really made me understand how the series as a whole gets written off as the pinnacle of Diddy anime. The real black pill of Made in Abyss is realizing that the anime is overall just a tame version of the manga. It felt like an outright crime reading this. This is the type of shit that's so vile that you keep an extra tab of Pornhub open, just in case someone walks in the room and you need to switch to something less career ending. Putting aside some absolutely unnecessary and disturbing details, like the fact that children are drawn with cleavage and there's even less censoring when it comes to scenes I've already complained about in the anime, the most downright deplorable aspects about this manga are the bonus chapters. A good chunk of them legitimately contain lolicon fetish porn, and I have no real words. And I don't even feel possessed to go into detail either. This is not safe for life, and shit like this makes me think that the author should be behind bars. Anime fans over the years have gotten acclimated to a lot of weird shit Japan will throw at us, and that's fine. I'm not gonna sentence you to 24 hours of Valorant just because you like High School of the Dead or some shit like that. Although, as a community, we need to know where the line is, and this doesn't just cross the line, it gets a running start and bulldozes through it at world record pace. So then this brings back the discussion of separating art from the artist. And here's the thing. I still heavily fuck with Kanye West. I don't know if there's literally anything in the world he could do that would stop me from listening to Graduation, to Pablo, to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I'm usually the type of person to not give a shit about how the artist is in real life. And honestly, Made in Abyss, the anime, as a piece of dark fantasy fiction is brilliant. The world building is unmatched. The themes hit hard. The emotional weight it places on the audience is like nothing else I've seen. And for me, that's what matters. Because art becomes meaningful through the memories we make with it, the feelings it pulls out of us, not necessarily because of who created it. The manga is some Diddy ass shit though, avoid that at all costs. So before ending this video, I want to address a rather big elephant in the room. Kill yourself. AOT is dog shit. Rope is free and you should use it. This person DM'd me this message hundreds of times. I think my advice to you, brother, is that grass is numerous and you should consider touching. For those who might be confused, I successfully achieved rage baiting the entire online anime community with this video through an absolutely taboo method, expressing my opinion, the ultimate crime. And I really think I unearthed an ugly underbelly of the community. I did price in a certain level of hate, like I always do, because they are ranking videos that will never appease everyone, but it got pretty out of hand. A lot of the senseless hate doesn't really interest me because you've probably gotta live a pretty sad life if you get that pissed at some random unemployed YouTuber saying Attack on Titan is his favorite anime. So with this section of the video, I want to respond to some criticism, some valid criticism and some not so valid criticism in my opinion. So one of the biggest decisions I made when drawing up that video, because of how ambitious it was conceptually, was to shift off a review / analytical focus and more towards an entertainment / comedy focus for most anime I talked about. And this is clear to everyone who's watched the video in any capacity. But if you solely consume the video from like clips on Twitter or Reddit or something, you lose that essential context. Like I just want to read you a quote, word for word, from my Gurren login section. This is how I start talking about it, by the way. This shit is the shit. This shit was shitting before farts were even invented yet. This shit is Gurren Lagann. And of course, there's the absolute timeless classic from my Evangelion section. To give context, Eva placed pretty highly on the list. I forgot where exactly, but I spoke about it for a pretty long time, and it did actually resemble an analysis with a deep dissection of the narrative elements in the story and how it ties in with the characters. But then ultimately, this is how I end off the section. But I think that at the end of the day, there's a message we could all learn from this show. That life is like a wiener. It may be up, it may be down, but it's never hard forever. And the reason I do this is because I don't want people to get the wrong idea. This is not a video that's meant to be taken that seriously. It's an opinion piece. The editing in that video might make it seem legit. That's just because I want to try out some cool stuff. But my actual demeanor in the video itself sort of reflects how I see these ranking videos. It was always just for fun. I don't actually believe you can literally rank art. There may be an objective worst anime, but there definitely isn't an objective best. And I'm painting this picture for you guys because one of the most common criticisms is that my reviews outside the top 10 are shallow. And my response to that is that yes, it is shallow, and no, it's not a review. If I reviewed every single anime I talked about, the video would be like 10 times the length. No one would watch that shit, and I wouldn't want to make that shit. My goal with that video was for it to be a fun time capsule where I could talk about a gajillion anime, and you guys might be able to get some recommendations off of them. And I understand getting mad if you go into a video like that just to see some asshole talk about your favorite anime for 15 seconds in the mid tier and move on. I also understand getting mad if an entire demographic like shoujo gets mostly skipped over. And I finally understand getting mad if you don't see your favorite shows represented in the top tiers. So let's address all that. I just made a quick little pie chart of the hate surrounding the video, at least that I've seen. And I'm going to start with the most surprising part of it for me. That was the backlash surrounding the shoujo / magical girl stuff. So first off, I never called all magical girl stuff Diddy Media. That's just a straight up Twitter hallucination. The only time I mentioned magical girls as a genre was as a preamble to talking about Madoka Magica, which is a show I really like. This is what I said. When I was first getting into anime, the whole magical girl thing seemed so fundamentally antithetical to masculinity as a concept that I actively avoided the genre as a whole. So you know that if I, of all people, got into a magical girl anime, that this particular magical girl anime would have to be pretty damn good. This was actually worded pretty badly. But even with the original wording, I think it becomes pretty clear with some added context that I'm not actually calling all magical girl stuff unmasculine. Given that when I first got into anime, I was about 9 years old. So can you really blame me for thinking that Tokyo Mew Mew was for girls when I was 9? But more of the story is that it wasn't me unironically shitting on the genre because it's not masculine. That would be pretty fucking lame. Me saying that had two purposes. One was to build a narrative surrounding my experience with Madoka Magica, and the second was to reveal my bias. Some people in the comments will have you thinking that me having biases is like a cardinal sin against anime Jesus himself, which is so weird because, well, humans have biases. That's like a thing. The reason I made those shonen and seinen videos is because I like shonen and seinen. The reason I never made a shoujo video is because it'd be a miserable experience to make, because I generally don't like shoujo stuff. It's not even that I'm completely ignorant to the genre. I love shows like Nana, like Yono of the Dawn, like Madoka Magica. I just never really cared for many others in the demographic, and that's okay. Different people like different things. Just how it is. So then we get to my favorite genre of hate comment, with the top 10 hate. So I saw a lot of people using the analogy that the video was like if a movie nerd who's seen all the classics and even seen a lot of underground gems were to go off and say that Avengers Infinity War was his favorite movie. And that's where I definitely disagree. If I ranked Dragon Ball, maybe Naruto, God forbid Solo Leveling as number 1, I could see that analogy working. But I think for Attack on Titan, I'd use a different analogy. It'd be like saying Breaking Bad is your favorite TV show, because despite it being one of the most popular TV shows ever, it's also one of the highest rated TV shows ever. Out of the top 40 highest rated anime episodes of all time on IMDb, 21 of them are from Attack on Titan. You could say a similar thing for Breaking Bad. Also, guess what my favorite live action TV show is? Breaking Bad. Because I'm that type of person to not give a shit if it's boring to put on a top 10 list. It is my sincere opinion that it is the best piece of television ever created. The same can be said about my opinion on Attack on Titan for anime. It doesn't matter that I've watched Ping Pong the animation and really liked it. I'm not placing it above a show I genuinely considered a masterpiece because it's underground. And by the way, I'm not making up this analogy. I actually found someone who got genuinely mad because Ping Pong was at number 1. But anyways, this concept goes for all of my picks in the top 10. Generally speaking, I think starter anime are starter anime because they're good. Of course, there are exceptions, but it's easy to show a normie Death Note as a way to get that person into anime. But if that same person were to come back years later with hundreds of anime under their belt, they could still say that Death Note is their favorite anime. That's allowed. The reason Death Note was the anime recommended to them first is because Death Note is widely considered a great show. I didn't make the top 10 how it is because they are popular. In reality, these are the anime that have had the most impact on me as a person, and I've rewatched all of them a minimum of like 4 times, except One Piece obviously. So then there's my least favorite batch of feedback. Twitter. More so than any other space, I could just tell that most people talking their talk did not watch the video in any capacity, and that's just the nature of Twitter. Remember when I had to clarify that I didn't call all magical girl anime Diddy? Yeah, that misconception was born from Twitter, and it got so bad that my friend in a server I'm in reached out while having this misconception. So yeah, fuck this app. The last section is pretty hard because from my perspective, it's actually really hard to distinguish between constructive criticism and people that would have hated no matter what. But there were some genuinely good points raised by some people. I think it's fine for the most part if I'm fucking around and cracking jokes when talking about anime I like, but when talking about shows I expressly don't like, I should really know my shit and engage more with the material before just saying it's shit and moving on. Also, one other thing I was pretty surprised by was that a ton of people misunderstood the thumbnail. I showed this video on screen before, and I think this person engaged with my video in good faith and had some good points also, but one of his biggest complaints was that the marketing of the video is dishonest and clickbait. I'm sorry, but if you were to take this thumbnail at face value, that just makes no fucking sense. If this were true, you'd audibly hear my journey through 9 years of puberty. The idea I thought would get across to most people is that this number is how long I've been watching anime. I started when I was about 9 years old. Although, given all of its flaws, I'm still proud of the video, especially the top tiers. It was a huge accomplishment, but I'll definitely be sure to also use this video as a learning experience. At first, I was a little disillusioned by the community as a whole because it really stings to put that much effort into a video and get that type of reception. But after a ton of peers and goats reaching out, I reminded myself that I made that video simply because I thought it'd be a cool challenge, not to appease everyone in the community. Thanks to everyone who's been supportive in the past couple weeks. Thanks to all my new and standing Patreon members. I really wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. The reason I didn't make my response its own separate video is because I want to get across that I'm moving on. From now on, I'm gonna make videos probably more similar to the first 15 minutes of this video. So yeah, that's about it. Like, subscribe, become a Patreon member if you want to pay my tuition, or join the Discord to become a part of the community. Have a good one.